Hi, welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. In this week's video, we're going to look at an EICR, and a pretty disastrous one at that. It turns into something bigger, and I'll speak about that later in the video. I'm not going to start ranting right at the outset. I'm conscious to get straight in and on with the action, because I know that's all people are really interested in, not much of what I've got to say. But before we do kick into the video, I have got a competition running across social media where I'm giving away some croppers, 50 sets. It's already up on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. Same applies to YouTube. If you subscribe to my channel, drop a comment on this video, just saying croppers or something like that. Something else useful as well, join in on the comments, I love that. But make sure you mention the croppers and I'll enter you into the draw for the 50 sets, and we'll give some out through YouTube as well. Also to mention about the IET spend video, that's been removed by the IET, currently for reasons unknown, and you'll have noticed on videos before and on other social media content I've put out, I've referenced to it a lot because it is a cracking video. I'm hoping it comes back. If it doesn't, I will try and make something myself along a similar line. It'd be really difficult because, you know, that was brilliant. It was actually involving SPEN and the IET. I could never really dream to kind of set up something in the way that they did, but I'll give it a good shot because it's an important safety video. And it's really key that we keep getting that message out in a clear and concise way. I'm mindful of not overcomplicating anything so people understand the message and the basic principle of what you need to do. Get your clamp meter on, turn the installation off and see what you've got flowing through earthing conductors before you disconnect them, and perhaps start treating any disconnected earthing conductors as live conductors as well, and encase them for the duration of your work, because obviously when you take that clamp meter measurement, it is only really valid for that flash point in time. Anything could change after you start working on it, so encase it, make it safe while you need to do what you need to do. But yeah, let's cut straight to the video. We're going to dive in and have a look how we found the installation. This is how we walked in on it, and it turned into a job that was much bigger than we were expecting or anticipating. And I called in some reinforcements to come and help me on this one. And yeah, hope you enjoy it. Right, here we are on the installation, and you can see here what we were faced with. This is exactly how we found it. So there was no cover on the distribution board. This burnt out main switch that an emergency electrician had changed not so long ago. No buzz bar. You can see the looped tails, obviously the other consumer unit. This is the service head and the meter. Note that little bit of melted plastic just on the line tail there. We'll get to that in a bit. So we've got the voltage operated earth leakage circuit breaker there with the tape over its terminals. And yeah, it's not the best. The earth loops out the bottom. It's all just kind of slung along the bottom of the cupboard. There's a steel wire armour cable wedged in there. No buzz bar cover. These tails, as I said, they just loop straight out and into the top of that main switch, rough as anything. They aren't actually even terminated very well into the bottom there. You can see indentation in the cable and they've been overstripped. The tails have got a bit of excess copper on show if I'm going to be really picky, but if you look at the top there, we've got basic insulation visible all across the top. It didn't even have glands in, they were just shoved straight in the board. Yeah, it's just rough as anything, deadly left like that. You know, the electrician who had been prior, that's exactly how they finished the job and reckoned they were done and everything was fixed and working. Kitchen cupboard closed, and tenant left to it. This is rented property. Yeah, so we need to strip this out obviously, and as I've spotted a little gremlin at the side of that picture there, we can discuss that in a little while. You can see here how the board is very wobbly and loose from the wall. It wasn't actually secured once we started poking about at it. Yeah, thumbs down from me, and let's press on. Okay, we can see the additional consumer unit here. We've got lots of excess copper on show. None of the terminations were particularly tight. In fact, they were all very loose. Yeah, it just hasn't been done very well, and we need to get this one sorted out as well, and we're going to get on with that as the video moves forward. I'll show you what we come up with. Okay, on this one, this was the actual earthing cable going into that small consumer unit. They just tapped it off the bonding termination on there, run it through an earth block, and taken it all the way around to that additional consumer unit. So again, very bodgy, needs sorting out. Well, we're removing that consumer unit anyway, but it's just amazing to see. Okay, so this is the real fine art of all of this. So you can see the line terminal there on the meter. The meter man's turned up and he's started to disconnect all of this and get on with sorting it out. It's just incredible to see that people had been and looked at this install before and not flagged that, and that's obviously where we've got the board to now. We've zipped that off the wall, and yeah, we can crack on. And actually, you've seen on that video there that we found the consumer unit with its cover not in place, the buzz bar didn't have its cover on even. The voltage operated earth fault circuit breaker didn't have a cover on its terminals coming into the top. It just had some red tape over it. What else did we find? The meter had melting plastic dropping out of the line terminal on there, so there was plastic dripping out of the bottom where the line would connect into the meter. The secondary consumer unit had been looped off the main switch on the first consumer unit, and that's rough. The consumer unit that fed the cabling out across to the other one had just kind of been hacked at to put the cables in. There were signs of thermal damage all over the place, and the thing that's really annoying about all of this is that the customer had had an emergency electrician come out. Well, it actually started out with getting the metering company to come out. So they phoned their electricity supplier because they were having power cuts in the village where they live, and theirs seemed to be continuing for longer than some of the neighbours. So they had them come out and have a look at the meter, look at the main switch and the consumer unit, and they advised the issue was to do with some outside sockets and that they needed to contact an electrician, which they did. An emergency electrician came out. He found the main switch on the consumer unit had burnt out, so he replaced that and everything seemed to be okay again. It wasn't until the PRS changes came into force, because this is a rented property, that the landlord arranged an inspection, and that's when we turned up. So we turned up to find it like that, and I'll show you some of the pictures around the rest of the install as well. There is other things that are appalling. So we've got slugs in outside sockets that were making them trip. There's bits of wiring that's not glanded in properly. There is some loose connections all over the place. So the bathroom light had wires falling out of it, the electric shower the same. And I'm not going to show you filming around this property because it's somebody's home. There's a lot of clutter and things in the way, and while they did give permission for us to do it, it's not really what my YouTube channel's about, showing how some people actually live. So I'm not going to do that. I will show you pictures of the fault we found, and I'll talk about them as well on a little run through as I do with some of my other videos. But yeah, it's just annoying, really annoying. And obviously we're there on the day to do an EICR, and all of a sudden that turns into something far bigger, because we can't leave it like that. Once you've seen that there's a termination of that sort. And we'll get back on with the video now. We'll show you how some of it comes back together and what the metering company do to install a new electricity meter, because I have something else to say about that as well. Okay, so this is what the meter man's come up with. So it's a split tariff meter. It's not even a single tariff meter. It's all he had in the van. In fairness, I guess he can only use the materials he's been provided with, and we needed to get the power back on, so he sealed that up. This was the interesting one with the yellow tape around the 100 amp service fuse. From what I could see, there was no reason why it couldn't be sealed with normal meter seals, and yeah, I do not understand that at all. But I'm not going to sit here and start slagging someone else's work off, because that's not me. That's just how they did it, and fair enough. They're the metering company. If they're happy with that, the customer isn't, and they're taking it up directly. So I'll leave that at that one. See, we've got the board on now, and the cables are all dressed over the top. So again, we've got the fire seal grommets in the top with a little slot in, and I've left as much space as I could above there, so if anyone did need to drop anything else in, they can do. We've maintained our IP ratings across there, so we're not causing an issue. Obviously that's a primary concern for us. If we look inside the board here now, you can see I've got the breakers in, and we're just going through the process of labelling them up. Somebody forgot which circuit was the immersion circuit. No names mentioned, but my esteemed colleague, whose fault it wasn't, went off to do a little RCD trip test on the immersion element and found me the circuit. You'll see there it's just zipped itself down. Everything else is all labelled up, and I always label them on the breakers as well, so if someone's got the lid off you can see exactly what's what. I just think that's a nicer touch for the next electrician to come and work on the installation. So this is inside the consumer unit as we've finished it, and I'm in no way perfect. This is day in the life electrician in. It's not an Instagram perfect one, but it wasn't a board we were expecting to have to swap, in total honesty, and we were very much against the clock getting it done. But I think it's turned out alright. It's not awful. Everything's connected, you know, as nice as possible. I've rearranged the circuits in a way that kind of covers against any heat issues from high power circuits being side by side, but primarily so I had enough length on all of the conductors to dress them away. So I'm still not happy with that meter down there and the way it's been sealed, but there you go, that is what it is. Yeah, to the board we've got the fire seals in the top, we've landed in the steel wire armour cable, we're all properly connected there. That was just stuffed in the board before. I've got the little cap washers in the back there, so they're holding the board on the wall. I think I've dressed it up reasonably nice considering the space I was working in, and I'll pop a little picture up showing you exactly the kind of contortionist I had to make myself to get in and do that job. It's turned out alright. So I hope that came across okay in the video of what I've actually done. So speaking about the consumer unit itself, obviously we've got the fire sealed closed glands in the top, and I selected those because I was kind of thinking if I fit glands into the top, so compression glands, then it's going to make it really difficult for the next person coming along to get cables in and out because it's that tight to the ceiling. There was no room to fit trunking in, so it wasn't very easy to kind of dress anything into the top. I wouldn't normally do it that way. I would normally use a piece of trunking, drop down into the board and keep it all as neat and tidy and enclosed as I possibly could. But sometimes you're faced with an installation where that's just not possible. So I've gone for the fire sealed grommets and little slicing them, drop the cables through, and I've popped those in across the top of the rest of the enclosure as well. So if anybody does need to add anything else into that board, it's not a total pig of a job, just trying to keep that as easy as possible for the next person. And yeah, it's got rid of the secondary consumer unit because there's really no need for that. I'm not sure why they fitted that in the first place. We've got our own in there now. Sorry, we've got an individual circuit for that water heater now, so we don't need to worry about that. It's a real disaster of various different people been involved on that install. I think it started in 2014. We have been provided with a copy of the building regs notification, so I know the electrical contractor who changed that board at the outset and installed that secondary board. You'll have seen the basic insulation that was left on show at the top. There was loose terminations all across it, and obviously 7 years have elapsed since then, so it's very difficult to hold anyone accountable for that over that length of time. But it's not the first job we've followed them on from, and yeah, if I see them in the wholesalers, we'll certainly be giving some advice on how they can maybe improve some of their working practices, shall we say, is the polite term. But yeah, before we get bogged down on that, obviously the metering company have come out. We've called them up and said we're on an EICR, we need to get this rectified today. We can't let this stay connected. You need to come and make an isolation for us so we can swap the consumer unit, because we want to get that changed immediately. And also you can't leave an electricity meter with melting plastic pouring out the bottom. And credit to them, they had somebody out within 2 hours. He didn't have a normal meter on his van, so it's a split tariff meter. That's all he had. So there's the user issue of cycling through to get meter readings, which is annoying. But also they didn't seal the service head. He said it was because the clips on the actual head were broken. I know they weren't. Not when he first turned up, they weren't. They were perfectly in order and in place, and I've got photographs to show that, and I'll pop them somewhere up here so you can have a look. And his solution was to wrap it in yellow electrical tape. And I don't like to criticise other people's work. I try really hard not to do that because you don't know the individual circumstances and time pressures. But we often worry about the DNOs and metering companies and what they think of us interfering with service heads and cutting seals and pulling fuses and all of these things, and we mustn't do those things, obviously. But when they rock up and they start doing things like that, it begs the question, what the hell's going on? Who's looking after these network operators' equipment? The customer's certainly going to be making a complaint about how that's been left. They had been out and actually looked at the meter and the main switch prior to the emergency electrician coming. This was in, I think they said February or March of this year. So not the greatest length of time ago. And that problem isn't something that's just happened recently. That's been there for quite a period. So there's question marks there as well. And yeah, I just think we can all do a little bit better. We can all look to improve, me included. There'll be elements of my work on this job that aren't perfect because we were under massive time pressure to get that board changed. It wasn't planned work, and this is kind of showing the good and the bad of being an electrician. It's easy when you've got all the time in the world to put a board onto Instagram and present it all looking nice. I've got a few, I've done them before. This one isn't perfect, but it's functional, it's safe, everything's connected adequately, the entry to the consumer unit is secure, all the cables leading into it are secure, and we've been around and removed all of the dangerous things we found in that installation. And yeah, there'll be electricians out on jobs like that every day. You end up doing stuff you're not expecting to do because of stuff you find that you just can't reasonably leave like that. And anyway, we'll get back on with the little video. I will show you how it all turned out, and we'll jump back on for a little chat at the end of this one, because I've got something else to say as well. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk about some of the other issues we'd found in the installation, and I'll run through some pictures that you can see flashing through the video at the minute. We had wildlife making its way into some external accessories, so they hadn't been glanded correctly, and slugs and other bits and pieces had decided to make their homes inside them, as they do, so we had that to sort out. There was some awful electrics in the outbuilding, so we had to sort all of those out and reconnect in the right way. So we've used conduit, bushes, glands. We've replaced a number of the outdoor sockets and switches, so we can get those back safe. But as I said, I really wasn't comfortable filming around this particular property, so I've popped a few of the pictures up so you can see the kind of things we faced in our EICR and incurred in them. And some of it we've just had to disconnect and remove, some of it we've managed to rectify and make good. And that's the whole purpose of PRS, isn't it? To ensure that houses are safe for people to live in. And a lot of the electrical stuff that was kind of historically butchered in by prior tenants, you know, that's now either been sorted out and is correctly wired, or it's been removed. So we'll jump back on with the video. I just thought I'd quickly drop in and say that and show you some of these shots because I said I would. And I hope you're enjoying things so far. Let's cut back to the video of me in my van. So I think we put that back together in a reasonable manner, having found it in the way we did, and we've kind of had to liaise with the landlord, the tenant, the electricity company and the DNO. The DNO are actually digging up the street through this village because they're replacing the cable coming in there, because that's knackered. So they're changing everybody's supplies from overhead and looped supplies to single feed to every property. So they were actually digging up the street outside while we were there. So there is that going on as well. And you know, it's one of those when the tenant's reporting an issue to the landlord's trying to communicate that to other people, and then stuff just doesn't get done right, does it? It's really difficult to manage property when you're letting it out, and you can see why some of the social housing installations end up in the way they do when there's time and money pressures, and Kimmy's spoken about that on Monday Club before. So certainly for me, PRS has been a brilliant thing. We've seen installations that would have never actually been looked at by an electrician otherwise, pulled out loads of potentially dangerous things, and this is another example of that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't slaughter my work in the comments. I'm aware that I was under time pressure. I've done it as neat and tidy as I can. The board doesn't look as good as it would normally have done, and I will show you a picture of where I was actually working. It was the back of the tiniest cupboard on top of some kitchen cupboards, stood on some steps. It's just the real life world of an electrician. It's not all sunshine and roses and perfect installs and neat tidy wires and labelling and diagrams. That's just not how it goes when you're out on site doing the job. And when you're under those kind of pressures, it's about staying safe, good communication with all sorts of other people who are involved with things like that. So I spoke to the metering company on behalf of the landlord and the tenant. They weren't comfortable doing that. I spoke to the DNO as well, who were outside, and explained what was going on, mainly trying to get them involved so they'd just come and sort it all out. Yeah, so it's been a bit of that. I'm hoping that the service head is going to be properly sealed. I'm not happy with that tape just been around it. The landlord isn't happy about that either. I have no real understanding as to why that's actually been left like that. It doesn't make any sense based on what I could see, and it can't have been that he didn't have seals because they sealed the meter up. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But again, I don't want to sit here and start slagging someone's work off. I absolutely hate doing that. I hate it when you see these pictures pop up and, you know, everyone dives in saying what's so bad about this and so bad about that. It's such an easy thing to do. It's the easiest thing in the world to sit and pull somebody else's work apart, when you should really focus on your own and improving yourself and the kind of work you can produce, is my humble opinion. So yeah, don't do that, Mark, shut up. So I'm going to leave the video there. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It makes a huge difference, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.